Odin is a very weird programming language to advertise or market for. Now, when I've been designing Odin, Odin is very pragmatic in its design and just general philosophy. Unlike all popular languages out there, it doesn't really have a killer feature. I've just tried to design it to solve actual problems with actual solutions. Those languages with a killer feature to them they do make them stand out, and consequently it makes them more hypeable. The problem is those killer features are usually absolute nonsense, very niche, or they rarely have any big benefit. Hype doesn't make software better. And that's the thing, is Odin isn't a big idea language, but rather an alternative to C on modern systems. It tries to solve the problems that other system languages have failed to address. The problems are usually very small, but unrelated to each other. It's not solvable with a single big idea. Now, a better way of putting this is name a single language out today, and I can name the killer feature in that language itself and why it became popular because of it. People may complain about the feature many years later, but that's what brought them to it. So before people say, oh, Odin's killer feature is, well, it has none. And I'm like, well, how the heck do you market that? That seems to be like an anti-marketing feature. There isn't an example of a popular programming language out there today which hasn't got a killer feature. Even C was that in many ways, with its being a portable assembly. Now, even if that's not actually true. I know I have a bad habit when people ask me, oh, why should I use Odin? And I usually just ask them then what their needs are, and if those needs are met with Odin, then I tell them to try Odin, as well as many of the other competition, to see which they prefer. I know that's honest English politeness to a T, but that's me as a man. I want Odin to be as best as it can be, but without trying to sell the world to someone in the process. I want to show people the trade-offs that each design has, and even in other languages, and not ignore those trade-offs. Look, there's no solutions, only trade-offs. This lack of hypeableness that Odin offers is kind of reflected in the people that seem to be attracted to Odin in the first place. They seem very pragmatic. They just want to get on with programming. And as such, these are the kinds of people that don't even share or hype Odin. So I guess I don't really want to easily attract the people who are more driven by hype than pragmatic concerns. I want to make software a better place, and attracting such people is detrimental to the endeavor in the first place. Just look at all the hyped JavaScript frameworks out there, and do they really make software better? Or do they just optimize for the mythical developer experience, which just results in more crap, which gets slower, bulkier, and offer less to the actual user? Now, my view is kind of like developer experience is kind of a little psyop, in the sense it makes software worse at the expense of making the programmer thinking he is being more productive, when really he is being less so, because the developer experience is optimizing for that dopamine hit of felt productivity rather than actual productivity or quality. So this is probably why some of my hot takes on the internet, especially on Twitter, usually do the rounds every now and then. I'm trying to find out what the actual problems are and see what possible options there are to either solve or mitigate them on a case-by-case basis. A lot of these, again, hot takes that I have been in the form of kind of like marketing, and look, I'm trying to at least give myself some exposure as well. This is my job. It's on the internet. Every single one of them is just my opinion. And usually I think they're quite mundane too. But because the internet is huge, there's going to be some people who will find those takes shocking because they've just not heard them before. And to be clear, I'm not really asking for Odin to be more hypeable in the first place. I am glad with the steady, albeit slow growth that Odin's been getting. The people who try Odin pretty much always stay for the long haul, as they fall in love with the language, since it does bring them the joy of programming back. Something which I do advertise on the website is the joy of programming aspect, but it's something which I've not been able to explain in words very well, but rather it kind of has to be experienced to be believed. The other issue with advertising or marketing a systems level programming language is that is a niche. It is manual memory management, and it has high control of memory layout, it has SIMD, structural array support, and many other things. And that's great for people who need that level of control, but not needed for the general web dev. And obviously, that isn't the intended audience for Odin, right? But the problem is that the social media landscape is the web dev people, those voices are the loudest, and many will actually shut down the voices of people who disagree with them just because, well, they're not in the web dev domain, so they must be wrong. And it's like, a minor issue that people are starting to think, when I'm noticing also with Odin, is it's just for game dev. The problem is that statement makes me laugh, because game dev is pretty much the most wide domain possible, where you do virtually every area of programming possible in it. So the just is a huge compliment, but clearly it's the wrong image. It's like saying C++ is just for game dev, when obviously it can be used for anything. And again, it's the same with Odin, because it's a systems programming language as well. Odin does bundle with many game or application oriented packages, but again, they are just that. Packages. I know there's another way of thinking about all these issues, is that look, the other problem is that Odin can be thought of in a few different ways, and so does many other languages. You can think of it as just the language itself, the language plus the compiler, the language plus the compiler plus the core library plus the vendor library, or you can think of it as the entire ecosystem. Now, I know for certain languages, when people speak of like Python, they usually think of the entire ecosystem. And I've worked with people who honestly thought Python was NumPy and SciTools, etc., and that you just had to download them separately to package it together. They had no distinction between any of these concepts. Python, in quote brackets there, was just the tool itself. Since I'm originally a C programmer and also a language designer, all of these distinctions are made obviously clear to me. There is no single C compiler, and they're all different. The standard library is dreadful, and you want to replace it with your own thing straight away. But again, C still prevails. I make those distinctions because I believe it makes a lot of things clearer around programming itself. And it helps you to understand what the flaws are in the tool. Thus, you can know how to mitigate or work around those issues entirely. But this does require a higher quality standard than that of the norm currently. And then kind of like the final aspect as well is that another issue is Odin is free. And as weird as that sounds, but since like 20 years ago at the time of recording, it's nigh impossible to sell a compiler. People expect a programming language and compiler to be free without caring how much time, money, or effort goes into building a tool such as that. Yes, there are compilers that still cost money, like MATLAB or Mathematica and such, but again, they were always cost, and they've not got rid of that cost, and they also rely a lot on like students in universities to keep purchasing it, so that's their model. Now, I know Odin does have a GitHub sponsors page. Yeah, that was a little ad, sorry. But we don't make that much, really. I'm happy for all the stuff we were making, and thank you so much for all the donations. But again, it's not definitely enough to pay anybody full-time yet. We will pay for the odd piece of contract work from time to time when we have the money. It's only a few weeks here or there. I would love to have a few more people work, or a few people in general, not more, just at least one, working full-time on Odin. But it's something we can't afford. It's one of the main motivations too, as well, behind all of this, is that we want to pay people for their work. Open source is a thankless, paidless thing in general. And yeah, I think people should just pay more in general for software. It's just that we've gotten so used to everything being free. So I ask you, fellow internet users, how the heck do you market or advertise Odin, a systems level programming language, when it does not really have a discernible killer feature, nor is it hypeable, but its very nature, just a pragmatic language. Now, I've got one hypothesis as to doing this, and the answer is not to advertise a language, but to make a library or a package that everybody wants to use, and it just happens to be only in Odin. So you're doing this effectively like other languages out there. The ones that can come to mind are going to be Dart and Swift. Dart, people only use Dart for Flutter. I cannot think of anybody else using Dart nowadays for anything else but Flutter. And the other one with Swift is people are using it mainly because, oh, it's better than quote unquote better than Objective-C because it's got better syntax, even though I think Swift is actually a worse language than Objective-C. But people also use Swift because they want the Swift UI and all the other libraries that come about it, which aren't necessarily available in Objective-C. So again, those people are using those languages not because of the languages themselves, but because of the libraries that they want to use to make products, and they just happen to have to use that language. So that's my hypothesis is the best way to target it. I'm not going to say what I'm going to be doing that for yet. That'll be for a later date for you guys to find out. But again, I do pose this question to you guys. What is the better way to advertise or market Odin? Because again, we can't really advertise it like other languages where you say, yes, that's the killer feature, because it doesn't really have one. And again, saying it doesn't have one is one. Again, that's not marketable. But again, thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for another video, which will happen. I have no idea when. So, bye.